Hi, I'm Clark on Temptress, and today we're going to do a review of this. This is a small lithium iron phosphate battery that has been set up and is being sold to, well, start motorcycles. ELB sent me this battery and asked me to do a review of it. I need a battery this size for a different application, but I said sure, because starting a motorcycle with a lithium battery is kind of a new thing, and I have just the motorcycle to test it on. I ride it's called a Roadstar Warrior. It's a V-twin motorcycle. I like to think of it as a Harley done right, but it has a really big engine. It has a 1.7 liter engine. And basically, if this can start that bike, this can start anything. Before I had a lithium battery in that bike, I had lead batteries, the biggest, best, baddest lead battery I could find, and it would crank slowly, and if I left the lights on or tried to crank too long, I was out of luck, had to go find a charger. Lithium is a lot better. So we're gonna talk about putting a lithium battery in a motorcycle. We're gonna talk about what you should do to the motorcycle to prepare for that, whether you really need to or not. And then we're gonna try this out in the bike. So let's do a review on this and see how it works out. Okay, first off, let's see what's in the box. We have a user manual. I've already gone through this, and it's a good manual. A lot of these things from China, you know, the manuals are barely understandable. This one's good. Little instruction sheet on how to make it fit where it doesn't already fit. Some basic screwdriver screws and the terminal screws, we'll need those. The battery itself and some pads and spacers. And the reason for this is you can make the battery a little bigger in case it doesn't fit just the way you want it to. I ordered the largest battery that'll physically fit in my bike. Now, first thing you're going to notice when you get one of these is they weigh like nothing. It's one of the reasons I'm reviewing this one today. If you've been watching my channel, I've had some health issues recently, and because of some surgeries, I'm not allowed to lift over 10 pounds. Well, this isn't close to 10 pounds, but a lead battery this size, you would notice it. That's good because motorcycles should be light. You know, that's how you get performance out of them. Mine, it's aluminum frame. And even though it's a big V-twin, it only weighs 600 pounds. I know that's a lot, but it's a big motorcycle with a lot of power. But why add another 10, 15 pounds to that? So lithium battery's got that advantage. Now looking at the specs here, this battery, it's a 12-volt nominal battery, of course it would have to be. 8 amp hours. You know, that doesn't sound like a lot if you're used to big storage batteries, but that's not why you have this battery. This battery's in the motorcycle to crank over the engine. And you shouldn't have to do that a long time if your bike's in good repair, right? It's not there to like run the headlight for 8 hours. So don't forget to turn that off. It's not there to like run the stereo for, you know, if you're at the beach. So remember, this is a battery that's about putting a lot of power, but not storing a lot of power. It says that it has 480 cranking amps. Now that's a little different than cold cranking amps. Cold cranking amps is just a different rating that's based on temperature. And I believe that lithium comes out about half when you compare it to cold cranking. But cranking amps is the appropriate number for this because when it's really cold outside, well below zero, I don't ride my motorcycle. That's the time for the car or the truck. So that's appropriate. And 480, that's a lot of power. This should crank it right over. Now, this is a lithium iron phosphate battery. It is going to be charged by the bike's alternator, of course, while you're driving down the road, put the power back into it. And that alternator has a voltage regulator on it. I've been looking around and there are replacement voltage regulators available for a lot of bikes, mine included. that are just down a little in voltage, and they're designed for lithium iron phosphate batteries. It's a good idea to make that swap. If you were to charge this with the regular voltage regulator, it might charge to such a high voltage that the battery's BMS shuts down and the alternator has no place to put its power. Now, if you see my other videos, you'll know that that's a bad thing for alternators. If an alternator suddenly doesn't have a load, well, it'll destroy the alternator. Usually, and you got to check your own bike, but the bikes I've seen and most of the outboard motors I've seen use a different kind of voltage regulator. They use something closer to like what we used in 1950s in cars. Instead of being a field controlling voltage regulator like a car has, or your big engine on the inboard of your boat, they use one that kind of realizes the alternator is not that big and not making that much power, so it gets rid of the extra power by just burning it as heat. And you can tell because these voltage regulators have cooling fins on them, like a disproportionately large amount of cooling fins. So what I'm saying is, if you were to disconnect the battery or it disconnects itself while it's charging, the bike should survive it quite nicely, just like an outboard could survive it. The way I think of it is the engineers are probably thinking for both outboard motors and motorcycles, maybe these connections to the batteries aren't the greatest. And a lot of motorcycles, you can kickstart them, so maybe there isn't even a battery there. So they want to have their gear be able to survive that situation. Where a car, you know, you're not starting your car without a battery, so it can count on it being there, and it's part of the installation with, you know, big wrench tension and not going anywhere. Honestly, with my bike, there isn't a Kickstarter on it. No human could ever kick that bike over. So, I'm currently running the stock voltage regulator, and before I put a lot of thought into lithium iron phosphate batteries, I put the first lithium battery I ever bought in that motorcycle and just ran it. And it ran fine. Now it's going to overcharge the battery every time I drive the bike. I don't know how you use your bikes. I mean, that first battery, when I put that in, I actually used it as my daily driver. And I mean, I used it 5 days a week. Still lasted a good long time. But a good long time was like 3 or 4 years, not 15 years. So with the stock regulator, don't expect the battery to last, you know, the 5,000 cycles that they're claimed to. Even if you get the lithium regulator, it's still not charging right. In fact, it's going to be doing that low current overcharge every time you ride the bike. Not much you can do about that. There is no charge controller I've seen out there, except for my product, the Bank Manager, that can actually stop at 100% and charge properly. But what I'm kind of getting at is sometimes that matters. Sometimes it matters a lot. If you're setting up a yacht to travel for years and years, you know, off grid, you need those batteries to last a long time, partly because they're expensive batteries, and partly because where you're going to, buying a replacement battery is more hassle than even the cost of it. You know, trying to get them custom shipped in, all of that. You might be on some little island somewhere where it's just not easy. Motorcycle battery, they're not that terribly expensive. They're not that terribly big. Use it for a few years. When it dies, buy another one. I think it's probably the right answer. So anyway, let's take it out. Let's put it in the bike and let's give it a crank over. Now, I've been ill for a few months, so the bike's just been sitting in my driveway. It is cold, cold, cold. Hasn't been started in 3 months. And this will be a good test. Remember, really big engine, really lots of compression and everything, and hasn't been run in 3 months. If this kicks it over, I'm going to say it's a big pass. Let's go give it a try. Okay, well, this is the bike. I've really enjoyed it. If you find one of these and you want it, you want it. It's a really nice bike. It's V-twin. Kind of has that Harley-esque kind of concept, except it weighs 600 pounds, aluminum frame, sport bike tires, Suspension comes off the Yamaha R1, racing series, big bike. It really performs. Nice thing about a performance bike is this bike is better than I am a rider. So something bad happens in traffic and I have to avoid it, I can push myself to my driver limits and know the bike can do more than I can do. That's safety. That's why I always drove sports cars. Yeah, they're fun, but also never had a fender bender traffic accident when I had the Porsche. And lots of times where if I was driving my old Mustang, I would have just plowed into the pile of cars ahead of me. That gave me the ability to get out. Anyway, let's dive into this. First, we'll take the seat off. Hopefully. Got the 2-up seat on it now. Oh, probably more than I should have lifted. Let's dig for the battery. You take a battery out of anything, take the negative terminal off first. You do that because negative terminal is touching, connected to the whole frame of the vehicle, and if something goes bad with the positive wire and you drop it, if the negative is still hooked up, bad things could happen. If the negative's disconnected, everything's dead. It's pretty benign. Only thing you could hurt is if somehow you touch the actual negative terminal of the battery, and that's physically really small. Okay, it's in there. I'm not going to button it up. I'm going to test it here first. Let's give it the test. Ignition key on. Remember, it hasn't been started in a while, and big motor. Here we go. Can't ask for better than that. Okay, I'd say this battery's a win. I'd buy one for a bike. Yeah, if this were the old lead battery, it would have gone like chug, 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 fire. And this is more like. So, good deal.